Do you ever struggle to write captivating endings to your scripts? The problem is, if you don't nail your ending, people will never forgive you for it. But after writing tons of screenplays of my own, I discovered a simple formula that helped me end my story so perfectly, it actually made me cry. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact technique to easily craft satisfying and memorable endings, ensuring that your screenplay pays off perfectly every single time. I'm going to do this with an in-depth analysis of one of the greatest endings ever, Whiplash. But if you want to write an ending that leaves your audiences speechless, first, you need to understand its purpose. Think of your screenplay as a rope tangled with knots. These knots are any core conflicts, unresolved questions, and character dilemmas that propel your story forward. The best endings are the ones that leave you feeling like every knot has been untied, unleashing a wave of clarity, resolution, and lasting emotional impact. And that's your job as a writer, untangling these knots.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
But here's the harsh truth. Most writers fail to even tie these knots in the first place. They write a story that unfolds in a straight line. You know, there's no tension, there's no mystery, and when there's nothing to unravel, the ending just falls flat. Remember, a great ending isn't just about what happens at the end. It's about how meticulously you set it up from the very first scene. So the question is, how do you tie these knots? And how do you make sure that your audience feels the satisfaction of untying them? If you want a step-by-step guide on how to craft your ending using everything outlined in this video, you can download it by clicking the link below. Let's start with the first one, the foundational element that will make or break your entire screenplay. Without this, not only will it ruin your ending completely, but people won't even be engaged enough to make it all the way to the end. But if you can establish it properly, it will make your ending so much more meaningful and worthwhile.
Do you want to know what it is?
Andrew Neiman practices until his hand bleeds. He breaks up with his girlfriends to focus on his drumming. You know, we see videos of him playing drums as a little kid. It's very clear what Andrew's goal is.
I want to be one of the greats.
All these scenes revolve around one thing: Andrew's obsessive drive to become one of the greatest drummers of all time. So, how do you implement this in your own script? Give your protagonist a clear goal that they're pursuing from start to finish. There's gonna be a surface level goal, like chasing after a love interest, or something deeply emotional, like overcoming the grief of losing someone. Whatever it is, it needs to be strong enough to carry the weight of the entire story. The whole point of an ending is that it's where we finally find out whether or not your character achieves his goal. While going through your story, the audience has to always be wondering, will this character get what he wants? But giving him a goal on its own is not enough to instill that wonder. You need something to twist the knife. And that brings me to the next knot in Whiplash. This is the secret ingredient that transforms a passable story into a nail-biting immersion. The thing that keeps you on the edge of your seat, glued to every scene, completely locked into Andrew's journey. From the very first frame, he's doing everything he can to impress Fletcher with his drumming. His first day of rehearsal, he's literally brought to tears because of Fletcher's rage, and this just keeps escalating. I mean, he gets into a car accident just because he doesn't want Fletcher to pick another drummer over him. And all of this is with the same intention, to show Fletcher that he's good enough. This is not the same as his goal. This is something else entirely. A hidden vulnerability that threatens to prevent everything he works towards. It's Andrew's flaw. If Andrew was just trying to become a great drummer, that would be simple. You know, he'd practice and eventually he'd get there. But that's not the reason we're watching. We're watching because of the flaw standing in his way of achieving this. While his goal might be to be an amazing drummer, his flaw is how dependent he is on Fletcher's approval. If he wasn't, these obstacles wouldn't exist because he just wouldn't perceive them as obstacles to begin with. And that would make for an extremely boring movie. Watching the protagonist fight through obstacles is what keeps people locked in a story. It's this constant struggle, this internal battle that determines whether they achieve their goal. So, how do you apply this in your story? Ask yourself, what belief is making it impossible for your character to achieve his goal? What's the flawed perspective they need to confront? This is what keeps putting them in these bad situations, causing them to react the wrong way. For instance, in Spider-Man 2, and for the record, I'm talking about the Tobey Maguire version, you know, the actual good one. Peter Parker believes he has to be Spider-Man and Peter Parker no matter what. And because of this, his personal life falls apart. You know, he keeps disappointing Mary Jane, he falls behind in school, and he just lets down everyone he cares about. The entire movie is really about that core struggle, his fight to find balance between being Peter Parker and being Spider-Man. I use this example a lot in my writer's coaching program because this is the key. Your character has to have a flawed way of chasing their goal, a relentless demon that keeps poking at them, forcing them to confront it over and over and over again. It's like a voice in their head that keeps whispering, hey, I'm gonna keep stopping you from reaching your goal until you get rid of me.
Am I not supposed to have what I want? What I need?
Until finally, it all collides when you reach the climax, the culmination of all these events. But before you can write an effective climax, there's one final crucial element you have to unearth. It's what lingers in the audience's mind long after the credits roll, the thing that makes everything in your screenplay worth it afterwards. Whiplash does a great job with this. First, there's Andrew's relationship with his father, a former author who gave up on his dream. Then there's Fletcher, who's hell-bent on psychologically abusing musicians to motivate them to play better. And even his student, who killed himself because he couldn't ever live up to his expectations. If you really dissect this story, every single line of dialogue, every scene, and every character, it all leads us to confront the question that burns at the heart of this film: how much is worth sacrificing in the pursuit of greatness? Because that's what we're really watching, right? A kid who casts aside everything, his relationships, his well-being, his sanity, just to achieve his goal. It's a teacher who will stop at nothing to make sure every one of his students is the best they possibly can be. And all this alludes to the philosophical question. This is why stories exist, not to entertain or give us a plot, but to answer a question about life. Whether it's a 30-second bedtime tale or a 2-hour feature film, at its core, a story is an argument about the writer's belief system. And if your screenplay doesn't have this, it's just a random series of events. But here's a trick to writing it yourself: you don't force it. The best way to weave a philosophical question into your screenplay is to let it emerge naturally from your character's goal and their flaw. Write a vomit draft first. Just unload and let the story unfold on its own from there. After you do that, that's where you look back and ask yourself, what was I really trying to say? Because that's when it clicks. Then when you revise, you'll actually be writing with a clear understanding of what your story is about. And I don't just mean about the way that Star Wars is about a farm boy fighting a rebellion. I mean about the way Star Wars is really a story about whether or not a seemingly insignificant person can change the course of history. The ending is where you finally answer this question. Once you have these three things simmering, your character's burning desire, a flaw that threatens to consume them, and the deeper question your story is asking, then you're ready to write an ending that leaves your audience speechless. Before I break down the anatomy of Whiplash's ending, a word of caution. This isn't some magic bullet or one-size-fits-all solution. There are a million ways to write a story. I want you to think of this as a blueprint, a set of training wheels just to get you started. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to show you how to write a great ending. Step 1, the ultimate test. It starts here.
Tonight could change your life. The folks out there make a phone call. You could be a Blue Note signee. On the other hand, if you drop the ball, you might be looking for a new line of work, because the other thing about these cats is they never forget.
The stakes have never been higher. Andrew has lost everything. He's at his lowest point. He gave up on the drums, he abandoned his dream, and he hit absolute rock bottom. And now, he finally has one last shot at redemption. He's about to perform in front of one of the most influential audience of music professionals. If he nails this, it could launch his career. But if he fails, his dream is over. And all we're thinking is this it? Will Andrew finally get the success he's been chasing? It sure seems like it until this happens.
You think I'm fucking stupid?
What?
I know it was you.
Fletcher sets him up to fail. He gives Andrew the wrong music, and in front of the most important audience of his life, he plays one of the worst drum performances ever. Andrew is humiliated, which brings us to step 2, the moment of no return. This moment drags him even lower than rock bottom. It feels impossible for him to recover, and this is crucial for any climax. You need a moment where it feels like the protagonist has completely lost, like their dream is officially dead. Your audience has to think there's just no way that he could ever come back from this, and that's what forces him into the next moment. Step 3, the choice. Andrew stands up from the drum set. He's about to give up. He's letting Fletcher win, and he's walking away from everything he worked so hard for. But then he sees his dad, and his entire journey is staring him right in his face. He doesn't just see his father, he sees his future. A man who gave up on his dreams, a man who settled. And Andrew knows if he walks away now, he's gonna end up the exact same way. So, Andrew makes his choice. He chooses obsession. He chooses to stop seeking Fletcher's approval and prove once and for all that he is one of the greats. Which brings us to step 4, the final transformation. He plays. And he doesn't just play well. He plays the best drum solo he's ever played in his entire life. The entire movie has built to this moment. This is his transformation, when he finally stops letting Fletcher control him and just do it. So, how do you actually implement these components into your ending? For step 1, the ultimate test, your character faces the worst possible threat to their fatal flaw, the very belief system that's been holding them back. They can't ignore it anymore. This moment forces them to confront it head on. But this test is built around step 2, the moment of no return. Before they can make their choice, they have to hit rock bottom, the lowest point of their journey. A great example of this is Flight. Denzel Washington's character, Whip, is a pilot who crashes a plane while he's drunk. His fatal flaw? He refuses to admit he has a drinking problem. Throughout the entire movie, he pushes away relationships. He blacks out from overdrinking and refuses to take responsibility until his test. In court, he sees a picture of his dead girlfriend, one of the flight attendants from the crash. The woman who's questioning him asks him, did the alcohol belong to her? For the entire movie, Whip has lied to everyone, insisting he wasn't drinking. But in that moment, he's defeated. His morality is staring him in the face. Is he really going to lie and blame it on his dead girlfriend when he knows it was him?
Is it your opinion that Caterina Marquez drank on that flight?
Could you repeat the question?
Is it your opinion that Caterina Marquez drank on that flight?
And this forces him into step 3, the choice. This is the defining moment where the character decides whether or not to change. Do they continue running from their flaw, or do they finally face it and grow? In Flight, Whip chooses to change. He finally admits it. He says the words, "I'm an alcoholic," and just like that, he stops running.
Excuse me, Mr. Whitaker?
She saved the boy's life. That's...
Could you speak louder, Captain
Trina
Whitaker?
Marquez did not drink the vodka. Because I drank the vodka. Objection!
Which leads us into step 4, the transformation. The final step is an action, one they never would have taken before. In Flight, Whip goes to rehab. He fixes his relationship with his son, and for the first time, he faces the truth instead of running from it. This is the best way to think about it. Your protagonist is staring down the barrel of a gun, and they're the one holding it. But it's not actually them. It's who they were when the story started. And now, they have to make a choice. Do they pull the trigger on their old self? This decision is what makes your ending unforgettable. So if you want to apply this framework into your own ending, I've created a step-by-step worksheet that will walk you through the entire process. This worksheet will make sure every element of your ending hits with impact so that when your audience reaches the final page, they feel something. Click the link below to grab it now and start crafting an unforgettable ending.